Guys, are you tired of poor-fitting clothes? Well, I've been there, and it's why I'm stoked to tell you about Barbell Apparel. You see me rocking their gear for a while now, and I'll tell you, the comfort and fit is unmatched, especially for those of us that don't skip leg day. Barbell Apparel is stylish and functional, built to power whatever your work days, workouts, and adventures demand. At Barbell Apparel, satisfaction guarantee is not just talk, it's a promise. Wear it, use it, live in it. Their gear is built to endure your every move. If any issues arise, they have got you covered with repairs or replacements. Barbell's mission is to empower your fitness journey and to help you break boundaries. Life changes, bodies transformed. Whether you're gaining, losing, or evolving, we will swap your product hassle-free for a new size. No questions asked. Go to barbellapparel.com to level up your apparel game, or just click on the link below. Conor McGregor just did an interview, and it was amongst the most telling interviews that Conor McGregor's ever done. Conor McGregor has been more straight and direct with you, the audience, ever since he returned to the pool. So we'll put that about November of last year, but he has been more straight and direct with you, the audience, than he has ever been. And I'm not sure you're aware. So Conor, in all fairness, has always been pretty straight with you guys. It's just been so entertaining, and a lot of it was promotional, so we chalked it up to hype. But it really wasn't meant to be. Now, for right now, I'm going back from the beginning. When Conor splashed onto the scene in 2013, when he was saying, I'm going to knock this guy out, it's going to be in the second round, when he did the entire Mystic Mac routine, when he did the whole, I'm going to beat Jose Aldo and I'm going to finish him, I'm going to go over to boxing and I'm going to give Floyd problems, right? And when he did this entire thing, all of that was hype and all of that was interesting, and all of that helped to drive tickets and get headlines and control press conferences. But the other side of the coin, he was telling you the truth. He was telling you his truth. I mean, he was just telling you something that he believed. He believed he could stop Jose Aldo. He believed he was the best in the world. He believed he could capture the crown in two different weight classes. I mean, in all fairness, like he's not always been a guy that just comes out and entertains. He does often speak with you. But I don't know that you've recognized it. And that's why I'm giving you the example of the specific return date of November when he re-entered the testing pool. From then until now is a completely different Conor. No matter how entertained you are or how funny or fun you think it is, he is speaking to you. And he's speaking to you like a partner. He understands the power that you have. He has always understood the power and influence that you have, which is why he has always brought you along on the journey of his career. But I'm just sharing with you, he's speaking to you different. And I'm taking the time to break this down for you because you haven't responded yet. If you're his tag team partner, he's got his hand out. He's in the ring, he's got his hand out, and you can reach him, but you haven't. My belief, or at least the experiment that I would like to test, is have you not tagged in because you're not interested and unwilling to help? Or is it because you don't know that his hand's out and he's asking you? So, the only thing Conor has ever sold, and I choose to use that term, the only thing that he's ever sold that he didn't have, right? Like, he sold confidence. I can do this and I can do it at two different weights. I can do it in two different sports. He sold confidence, but he had it. His pockets were full of them. If you were buying, he could start handing it out. He sold entertainment. He got into where he was selling fashion, and he did this very early on back in the bow ties. I mean, if you go back and look at him now, you won't know that he looks sharp because those are $80 outfits, but that was all the money in the world that he had. I mean, he was dressing up and he was doing it for you guys. He was coming in with glasses. Those were the nicest threads that he could get a hold of. Everything that Conor did and everything that he told you he had and everything that he sold to you, he actually was in possession of. Except power. That's the only one that was a facade. And he did it very well. And it was so important to understand and observe how well he did it, how it worked, and why he knew it was important. I'm not going to break those three things down for you. There's your homework assignment. You got to go do that. But it did work. I remember top guys in our sport. Well, I'll just throw it out. My friend, Boss Rutan. Boss Rutan and Kenny Rice had a TV show. Boss went on that show, and it was something that Conor wanted. He had both belts back then. I think it might have even been the Floyd fight, but it was something that Conor wanted. And he was the 45 and the 55-pound champion. I remember Boss saying, well, they're going to have to do it. Conor's got all the power. And Boss Rutan is a world champion. He's a legend. I don't know that you could produce a name that goes back further than Boss Rutan. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was the host of the only MMA show on TV. I mean, right, Boss matters. And he believed it. He said a very matter of fact, well, UFC is going to have to let Conor do it because he's got the power. And it was a major moment for me where I stood back and go, wow, it worked. My goodness, this worked. Conor's flex has worked, right? Because perception is reality. If our industry believes that you have it and you get treated like you have, then you have it. 100%. You guys ever been threatened? Let me just give you a great example. Have you ever been threatened? Because the only power that a threat has is the power you allow it to have. A threat is nothing. It is nothing. Somebody could do it online. Whatever the threat is, whatever reaction it is that you have to it is now the power that threat has. So I'm only sharing that with you because if people believe that Conor has power, they show him that respect, then he does. It's the same thing. And Conor started going a little bit far with it. I need ownership. I'm partners. Give me 3% of the company. Like, he started to go a little bit far to where it forced Dana to publicly answer these questions, which Dana never would have done. He would have let Conor run his shtick. He would have let him get as far as he did, knowing he had no power. He had no ability to sign anybody. He had no ability to cut anybody. He had no ability to negotiate with and for anybody other than himself. And I'm only sharing that with you because Conor put out a piece. I watched it. I read about it. I watched it again. And I called my partner Ryan, who had just watched it and who had just read about it. And we discussed and tried to break this down. There has never been a spot that Conor McGregor has ever done where he reveals to you, the audience, that he is having a hard time even getting communication with the UFC. I mean, before we get into a fight, before we get into a title fight, before we get into a draw, before we get into media days, got to get a phone call. Conor let it be known that they are not mad at one another. And there was not an event. We did not have something that went awry and I got up and stormed out. And we're yet to rebuild that bridge. There was nothing like that. The UFC very much defended and values Conor McGregor. Jeff Nowitzki and Hunter Campbell held a press conference when USADA publicly took shots at the UFC. And they defended themselves and their brand in the UFC. They defended the fact that they were the clients of USADA. Right? They are USADA's customer, and therefore for USADA to put them down, they just really thought was a dirty thing to do. But they only defended one athlete by name, and that was Conor McGregor. So, I mean, I'm just sharing with you, like, when the UFC has had a chance to speak up, they also have made it known that nobody's mad at anybody here. But Conor just can't get this call back. He can't get that negotiation going. And when you reach that point with the UFC, it's not out of anger, and it's not even a negotiation tactic. When you reach that point with the UFC, it means that the UFC has come as far as they're going to come in whatever negotiation or talks that you're going to have. There is now nothing else to talk about. There's not going to be a compromise. There's not a way you're going to get the UFC off of a ledge. And therefore, there would be nothing to discuss. Here's where we're at until we can solve this problem. It's very relevant. UFC was in a very similar spot with Francis Ngannou, where Francis had one fight left, and the UFC said, well, and we need to change that. If you're our champion, we need to extend this. We need to get this deal hammered out and come to terms. And they never did, and that's okay. The clock ran out, and the Francis story is quite a successful one. But for Conor to reveal it, he's asking you guys to get behind him. He's letting you know. My message and my voice has gone as far as my message and voice can. I'm ready to fight, and I'm willing to fight anybody. I understand that's Michael Chandler. Fine, then Michael Chandler can be the anybody. But if something else comes up, and he asks for Nate Diaz specifically, he's asking to debut at the Spear. He's asked for some very cool things. And generally that would be an offer. But one thing that Conor did say within this piece, and it does go back to the Spear, and it does go back to Nate Diaz. He said that was publicly shot down. I don't remember that. But it is relevant, and I don't doubt that it happened. It's very relevant because the UFC is very consistent. And whatever their ideals are, and whatever their ideas are, it's very across the board. And to know that Conor is the sport's biggest star, you better believe. There's not even a close second. But there is a second. I believe Nate Diaz is that second. And the reason I bring that up is if the UFC didn't want Conor and Nate, which they've always said, Dana's always said that trilogy and it lasts, so we can do that anytime. But Nate isn't under contract with them at this point, so now you got to go in, you got to do a contract. It's this whole thing, not to mention if it's the Sphere and it's those two, it's going to be a main event, it's going to be a pay-per-view. See, and now's where you're starting to understand that the UFC has ideas and an image and a way that they're going to go, and there's not going to be exceptions to it, whether that's age, whether that's going to the Spear and main eventing a pay-per-view without a title. I mean, I'm just sharing. When Conor brought Nate in, we now know this wasn't secularism. This wasn't just Conor. It wasn't that Conor had done something wrong. It's not that Nate has done anything wrong. It's that in the direction they're going for their main event stars, they have a different vision. And Conor has his pride. And he's not going to say, I need help. But this is the closest thing, so I'm asking you for him. The reason he's telling you that, there is something. I personally believe it's the placement of the card. I personally believe they don't want to main event him. And I personally believe that Conor isn't going to fight on anything but a main event. And as the sport's biggest star and the highest paid athlete, he has cause. I mean, he's not just showing up empty-handed with his hand out. He has things that he is going to bring. And the opinion really is yours. I mean, you guys spoke up. You just did this with Bo Nickel. You just did this at 300, and you said his placement is a little bit too high. You just did that, and you had your reasons. Well, Bo Nickel's young. He's completely undefeated, and he's finished every opponent he's got. I mean, if a guy like that is getting resistance from you guys for opening a show, I'm only bringing that you voiced your opinion before, and you might see it different with Conor. The biggest star, and he is. Everything that you do in this sport, from winning the fight to getting the media, from combining these two, is so you can work your way up the card. And if you're the biggest star, you've earned it. Perhaps is your opinion. And now he's asking you to weigh in on your opinion. And you know what, guys? If you're on the other side of it, voice that too. If you believe the biggest star like Conor is at a point where he needs to pass the torch, go under, he needs to be a co-main event and open to set the stage for somebody else, voice it. Now's your time, and Conor is asking you to speak up.